What's up, everybody? I am Mongoose, you are awesome, and this is episode 9 of Myths from Monolith, a community-based series where I take lore written by Paragon fans like you and create a video. Today is a Belica story written by Shurifire. I hope I'm saying that right. This one is much longer than the normal myths that I do, so I'll link the story in the description below if you want to follow along. However, I'm not going to do the usual captions. So let's enjoy. Everybody knew what burn blood powder smelled like. If you went anywhere remotely outside Omeda City Center, you were liable to catch a whiff on it on every street corner. It seeped into its users' clothes and drifted from abandoned paper bags, the cloying, smoky scent of broken dreams and berserker rage. 40% of arrests in the Omeda City Police Department made annually for aggravated assault were later found to be under the influence of burn blood, with a further 12% also being shot full of red-eye nitro. It was that common. That meant that it took barely 10 minutes for the OPD to get on the scene when, after boiling under the harsh summer sun for who knows how long, one of the Yingmei cartel's secret burn blood refineries exploded, covering the entire block in a thin red haze. Lieutenant Belica was the first to answer the call. Sweat poured down her brow as she ran down the winding paths of the city's slums, sun-scorched tarmac sticking to the soles of her boots. The assembled crowd of citizens, clad in a jarring mixture of battered leathers and neon polymers, parted before her as she approached the crimson cloud enveloping the building, all slowly receding as they recognized her yellow biohazard armor. Her ponytail came to a stop as she reached the front of the crowd, turning to address them. "Attention citizens!" she cried. "This area is now classified as a Class 2C biohazard. Please move at least 3 blocks away to avoid the effects of the contaminant. We believe this to be burn blood powder, so there exists the possibility of violent individuals exiting the property in question soon. The OPD advises that you return to a safe location ASAP." With increasing speed, the crowd dissipated. Some muttered begrudgingly, likely those who had come to buy their next fix. Belica made mental notes as they did so, knowing there was a decent chance that she'd see them again soon at some point, probably at a lineup. Once satisfied that the area was cleared, she turned back to the task at hand. The lieutenant took one hand from her submachine gun, reaching for her gas mask. The transparent plastic plate fit snugly over her features as she scanned the location. A single, rundown house, 2 stories tall and even more neglected looking than its shantytown neighbors. Broken glass from the initial explosion littered the ground. Glittering in the sunlight, the gaping windows above loomed like the jagged jaws of a Zashinian beast, pouring out more and more of the poisonous dust. She gulped. A capable professional she was, but in the end, no one enjoys throwing themselves into hell. It was only a matter of time until the lab's workers left the building. If they'd been breathing concentrated burn blood reagents for 10 minutes, then they would be far beyond reasoning, let alone restraint. Even if she managed to cuff them, they'd likely break their own arms in all their thrashing around. There was no realistic way the situation would be resolved cleanly. What mattered was protecting the citizens and shutting off the leaks so the cloud's spread could be minimized. Belica brought up her holographic comms panel, barking a quick report for her superiors and her intent. "Area is clear, proceeding to breach, weapons set to stun." Looking up at the looming shadow of the building one final time, she steeled herself, readied her weapon, and with a single devastating blow kicked down the door. It didn't take Belica long to realize she was in over her head. Barely 2 minutes after her entrance, she'd already laid out 3 assailants. They'd come out of the red fog, arms flailing and frothing at the mouth, and fallen to the ground as quickly as they came. The noise had, however, poked the beehive, and now the stomping footsteps of a half a dozen more were sounding from upstairs, sending the equipment of the lab's ground floor rattling. Belica dashed for cover, flipping a work table, sending an array of glass tubes and pipes crashing to the ground, and shielding herself from the stairwell as she frantically filled with her equipment. Just as the first goon rounded the corner, her conjured void drone came online, nailing them straight in the chest. As more appeared, bodies stacked up on each other, the drone firing into their midst with all it was worth. Belica cursed her own self-righteousness. "I'm so stupid. I had no idea what was in here and I went in without backup. It'll be a miracle if I get through this without a scratch." Her bottleneck had proved effective, but it soon reached its limit. At the back of the pack was a huge man, covered in tattoos and body armor, snarling as he stumbled through the stunned bodies of what Belica could only assume were his subordinates. He had Yingmei written all over him, figuratively and literally. The man roared in rage as he saw the distinctive OPD drone. Peeking from cover, Belica saw he was wearing a scrap of cloth over his mouth. While it might have at one point been a dirty white, it was now tinged orange by the burn blood miasma. He'd protected himself when the explosion went off. That meant he hadn't been as badly exposed as the rest, retaining intelligence despite his state of painless stupor. And in turn, that made him so much more dangerous. Belica's mind raced for solutions. Alone, she had very little chance at winning, or survival. "Damn OPD," he spat, grabbing at his hip and whipping out a hate spitter. He swung the triple-barreled revolver in a blur, a single round flying out with a deafening crack and puncturing the drone's chassis. It sparked and slumped to the ground, disappearing in a surge of blue light. The thug laughed triumphantly, striding over his fallen brethren towards the table. Belica's many years of training and even more of experience kicked in, and she leapt into action. Simultaneously, she dialed her communicator for the nearest available OPD combat agent, and reared up, firing suppressive bursts. The stun round smattered across the thug's chest, but through the drug-fueled haze he barely felt it, staggering forward and charging like a bull. Belica dove to the side, delivering another spray of fire to the gangster's side as he rolled to her feet. Grim satisfaction coursing through her as her shots hit the mark, drawing a gasp and knocking him to the ground. "Officer Murdoch here, that you, Lieutenant?" The comm channel connected and Belica's heart jumped. Murdoch, one of the best shock troopers the OPD had. Even if he was somewhat of a maverick and a terrible prankster, she might yet make it through. "Murdoch, I need you to—"
"You see, I've been meaning to talk to you. Feel like now's as good a time as any."
A vague unease began to grow in the pit of Belica's stomach. She knew how Murdoch could get sometimes. Of course, it was still dwarfed by the cold terror from the crazed gun-toting mobster before her. "Murdoch, now really isn't the time." She was cut off as the enemy spun wildly, firing off another shot from his hate spitter. The bullet tore past her by mere inches, cutting into the wall and sending a spray of plaster and splinters showering over her.
"Well, that's it, ma'am. I think it is. I'm quitting."
Belica froze mid-reload. Despite the situation she was in, her voice remained as steady as the aim of an echelon graduate. She spoke a single word. "What?"
"I've been thinking about it for a while, really. I'm just not cut out for the OPD. We both know it. I was thinking about going solo. Maybe see some action out in the wastes. You know, like Jedediah Sparks."
Belica was barely listening now, as the thug had reared up again, swinging at her wildly with enough strength to shatter bone. As she emptied her magazine into the villain's gut, fleeting thoughts rushed through her mind about how absurd the current situation was. "Murdoch, I'm busy, and I need your help." Murdoch snickered, which for anybody that knew him was never a good sign.
"Sorry, ma'am. You're about to get busier. You know how broke I am, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to take my gear with me. The whole rig."
The thug took one step too far forward and Belica saw her opening. One hand dropping from her gun, she spun, shooting a leg across her opponent's stance and grabbing him by the lapel. Her arm coiling as she dropped and using his own momentum against him, cutting his legs out from under him. Carried by his own inertia, he flipped through the air, crashing to the ground and gasping for air, the wind knocked out of him. Breathing heavily at the exertion, Belica straightened up, looking down at the gasping and twitching form of the fallen gangster. What Murdoch had just said finally fell through, and her mind switched to the other part of her job. "Murdoch, your exosuit alone costs 50,000 credits. Your shotgun is probably another 10, and don't get me started on that little blaster." Murdoch was silent, but Belica knew exactly what face he was making. That same insufferable smirk he had made the day she frog-marched him out of the building after that particularly malicious lavatory prank. Her voice descended to a whisper. "Do you have any idea how much paperwork I'm going to have to do?" Another snicker.
"Not a clue, Lieutenant. That's the least of my problems right now. I gotta get out of town before the Corps tracks me down. You ever get out of the city, I'll buy you a drink. See you around." There was a crackle as the line went dead. Belica stood still for a moment, gun trembling in her grip imperceptibly, stuck in a horrible limbo between professional composure and incandescent rage. It was at that point her earpiece toned, informing her of several new messages. As if via autopilot, she brought her arm up to check. The hollow panel displayed a slew of messages. An active request for an investigation into an explosion at the Machina workshop. A report about a sentry combat robot running amok downtown. 14 frantic messages from her husband asking where she was, if she was alright, and so on. Slowly she let her arm fall. The hologram flickered and died. She looked down at the fallen mobster with an inscrutable expression. She didn't have time for him, or the current impromptu drugs bust. She placed a firm boot on the thug's wrist, pinning his pistol in place, and looked into his fury-filled eyes as she reached for her hip.
Leveling her neural disruptor, she knew that at the height of the Omedan summer, there would be plenty more days like this. She wished that she could catch a break, but it was her job. Fighting crime, keeping the peace, serving out justice, and days like this were just another day at the office. Hope you enjoyed today's story. Sorry I didn't caption this one. This story was like 5 pages long, and I normally do about 1.5 pages. And even captioning like the 1-page stories already takes about 4 fucking ever to do. Anyway, if you enjoy the series, void bomb that like button for me. If you have your own story to submit, send it to mongoosegg@gmail.com. For now, this is Mongoose signing off. You guys have a good one. Mangoose!